We are live on Facebook. Good morning, everyone.
Oh, no.
Happy Monday. We are excited to be here. And I am really excited about our guest this morning. We met a couple of years ago, and I had the honor and privilege of watching her kind of transition into where she is now. And I've been watching her from the sidelines, and I wanted her to come on today because she's a single agent. She is killing it with buyers. And I know that we have, and I can just tell by the number of people that are coming on this call, that a lot of you want to hear this content. So I am just going to let her introduce herself, and then you're not here to hear me, you're here to hear her. Put your questions in the chat box, and we will make sure that we monitor those, and then we'll open it up around the last 10 minutes for you guys to ask questions. So get your questions ready. Kimberlee, take it away.
Cool. Do you want me to just share my story a little bit, I guess? Sure. Okay. So my name is Kimberlee Meserve. I'm an agent in Boston. I am a solo agent. I have an assistant and a transaction coordinator. But the interesting thing is that I've only been in my market since late summer of 2018. So I've been an agent for 5 years. Met Brinley in my prior role. I was working as an executive assistant a little bit, kind of dabbling, trying to figure things out in a different market. And then I just made a decision in late 2017 that I wanted to move to a new area. And so, because I'd always lived kind of close to where I grew up. So on a whim, just figured I'm young. If there's ever a time to do it, I might as well do it now. And I went through a little transition. I was on a team, and then things kind of fell apart with that team structure. So when I moved to Boston, I started doing first-time homebuyer workshops. I figured, well, a lot of relationships in real estate, especially with listings, are built on knowing people already, or you're going to hustle the phones on expireds. And I wanted to draw from the experiences that I had when I bought my first house, that there were so many things I didn't know, and my agent didn't do a very good job explaining. So I was like, you know what, I can't be the only one that's having that experience. So I started doing first-time homebuyer workshops, and it's grown to be an amazing thing. And it really, there's something to be said for focusing on your one thing. And that was something that my coach really had to keep pulling the reins in on, because I'm a huge person for getting distracted by squirrels. And so she, the first year that we coached together, she was like, all right, are you getting distracted by a squirrel? What's our one thing here? And it's just been incredible for my business. So my first full year in the Boston area, I did just over 11 million in volume. Just myself and a transaction coordinator. I did have a showing agent briefly, but it wasn't the right fit. I didn't make the right hire. And then this year I am on track to do probably over 50 units. So at my average price point, that will be about 25 million in volume. So, yeah, any questions? Brinley, you're muted. So,
that just blows my mind. No, keep going. So how'd you do it? And why don't you tell everyone real quick, in the last 4 weeks or 5 weeks, whatever it is of this happening, what results have you achieved?
Yeah, so the last few weeks have actually been pretty insane for my business. I was really nervous when this all kind of started to transpire, because I was having such great momentum, and I'm like, oh no, this was supposed to be a huge year for my business. And luckily things haven't really changed. It's actually gotten crazier in a good way. So my goal for the year is to do 50 units. So to do that, I pretty much have to have 4 to 5 appointments a week. In March, I had a total of 15 appointments in the whole month of March. And I was just like, this is insane. So we have really bad traffic in Boston. And so a few months ago, I really started to try to push people to meet with me virtually more anyways, because I just was getting so sick of driving and coordinating people coming to my office, all that. So I'm very strict in my business that I won't work with anybody unless they sign by our agency. So we sit down, we have a full consultation. I walk them through all the expectations, all their needs, wants, and then here's what you can expect from working with me and my team. And, me and my team is just me and my transaction coordinator and my admin. But I want to introduce all those people so that it's not a surprise when they go under agreement and then suddenly they're hearing from Vincent, who's my transaction coordinator. So we set all those expectations up front. And that's a huge opportunity for me to deliver value. I think I was reading a thread on a group yesterday, and someone was saying buyer agency agreements are a joke. I don't think so. Like, yes, when it gets to the point of being enforceable, like you can enforce them, but is it worth your time? But to me, it's more or less a loyalty agreement. And I think the people that struggle to get buyer agency signed are the people that are struggling with their value proposition. I have pretty much like a 98% sign rate on my appointments because most of my clients are coming to the first time homebuyer workshops. So first of all, I've already started by providing so much value to them for free. Like, I'm giving them all this wealth of knowledge, not asking anything in return. And so by the time that they're meeting with me, they already know, like, and trust me. And so it's so much easier to get that yes. But then we're sitting down, we're going over all their needs and wants, and I'm showing them my team's value proposition. Look, instead of me trying to be the one person juggling everything, we also have Vincent, who's my transaction coordinator. We've got a really tight-knit team of attorneys, home inspectors, lenders, like all these great people that work to make the transaction come together. And so they're seeing the value. And when it goes to close, and if anybody's curious of what my buyer consultation is, there's a video floating around in a couple of groups. I role played it with Jen Davis. I think in the Pivot group, there's a video of it. So you can watch that role play if anybody wants to see that. But basically, by the time I'm asking them, they're already on board. Like, why wouldn't you work with us? So the interesting thing with all this shift, I'm a very direct person, and anybody that was on James Shaw's call this morning, they were talking about the importance of just being really direct with your clients right now, because this market is not for everybody. Some people are having to make decisions on virtual showings, on Matterport tours. And if you're not comfortable with that, then this might be a time for you to sit on the sidelines. But we need to be having those really direct, honest conversations with our clients right now. So the interesting thing that I saw in my business was I didn't really have a drop off in my pipeline. It was almost a reshifting. So I had a couple, like, we're all going to have clients that maybe they're worried about their job, maybe they're worried about dipping into savings, and this just isn't going to be the time for them. But we also have a lot of people living in tiny apartments in Boston. So I had a lot of people that were later on in the year, and now they're like sitting at home trying to navigate two people working from home, and they're like, oh my gosh, we need to get out of this apartment. So it's been great. I kind of had that reshifting, and in the last probably 3 weeks, I've put 6 deals under agreement and signed, what did I say, 12 since this all started. I think I said 12 buyers. I had to pivot my first time home buyer workshop to having a virtual event, which was a really cool opportunity for me. So I've always just run my ads that direct people to those events on Facebook. And Nick Baldwin and I did a Lab Coats. If anybody wants to know specifically about the events, there's a Lab Coats agent webinar that you guys can look up somewhere. I don't want to go too much into that. So we had to pivot the events to being virtually, and I'd always done my ads on Facebook. So this was a cool opportunity for me to really dabble in Command and just make some adjustments, figure out how I could save some money by running ads in Command, because I didn't have that overhead of having to pay for the event space. So if we had an event that was kind of a wash, no big deal. So our first one, we already had a ton of registrations for, because we weren't really sure. It was kind of a last minute decision that it got canceled in person. And so that one was really great. I got I got 5 buyers from that, and over 3 million in volume. A couple of those buyers have already started putting offers in on places. And then the second one, kind of a wash, was dabbling with like different ads and playing with Command. Really cool opportunity though for us to just like not spend a ton of money, try to figure out if we could save some money. And then yesterday's event, we had almost 30 people on the call. I haven't finished my follow-up from that, because that's usually like the next day thing that I do. And I'll probably get like 3 or 4 buyers from that.
So can you just give, I know that y'all did the video, but can you give a quick outline of like maybe how you market it, an agenda for it, and then the follow-up, just to give some points around that. And then our team is looking up those videos, and we're going to get them posted in the group for you guys, so that you can have easy reference to them. So go ahead, Kimberlee.
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of the quick overview. Having gone into a new market where I didn't know anybody, I wasn't going to be relying on like SOI or people that were renters that I already knew. So I had to get creative, and I started by just running all my ads for the events through Facebook. Super simple targeting, nothing complicated. Any of you guys could do it through Facebook or Command. and then they go to an Eventbrite page where they register for the event. And then the first few events I did was before I moved to Boston. I started doing them at my office, and honestly, like, it was not a very good turnout, especially days where the weather was really nice. You have to think of your target audience. So first-time homebuyer is more of like a millennial demographic. Are they going to want to go to a real estate office on a nice Sunday? Probably not. But are they going to want to go to a brewery where they can maybe hang around afterwards, have some drinks with their friends? Much easier to get them out to there. So we saw a huge uptick in numbers when we switched venues to the brewery. So we do it at a local brewery. The cool thing is that over time, because we've probably had almost 100 events there now, because we started doing them monthly, then we started had such good success that they're twice a month now. So because I've had so many events with them consistently, they've also grown their business, and with that, their prices have gone up, but they've kind of kept things the same for us, which is cool. We have a great partnership. We get a little bit of a discount. And I also like heavily market them too. So I'm really big on Instagram. I'm always tagging them in my Instagram, and that's just getting more eyes on their business. So it's kind of like paying it forward that with that business relationship. And so when they come to the event, everybody gets a free beer. It's 11:30 to 1 on Sundays. I've had a bunch of people ask me, is there a magic time to do it? I have no idea. I've only ever done it that time because that's the cheapest time we could get. So it works apparently. I mean, I wouldn't recommend doing it like midday during the week, but I don't think there's really any secret sauce to like time, as long as you're just doing something consistently. So they come, they get a free beer, and then we talk about everything that you could possibly need to know. But we don't make it too complicated. So I don't have a home inspector. I don't have a million different vendors there, because I think that's too overwhelming for buyers. They really just want to know, like, can I afford to buy a house, and what can I afford to buy? So it's pretty much just me and my lender partner. Every once in a while, our attorney will just kind of jump in and like say hi, talk for a couple minutes. But we're starting out by talking about the market, what's going on in the market. And then we dive really deep into financing, everything you need to know, difference between pre-qualification, pre-approval, pre-commitment, which is something we do a lot in our market. What are closing costs? What's included in that? What kind of credit do you need to buy? So we really do so A to Z for the whole process. And then just timeline. I talk about, okay, so you're ready to start talking about buying a home. Here's where you start. Here's how the whole thing goes from start to finish for the transaction. So they are leaving there with all this information that I've given them for free. We actually put it together in booklets instead of like doing a PowerPoint. And in the booklets, like I made it myself on Canva. It's a really great free tool any of you guys could use. There's a bunch of spaces where they can like fill in the blank and they can write notes. And we really encourage participation throughout the event, so they're not just sitting there getting glazed over. But then they're taking their notes from their first-time homebuyer class. So even if they're like a year or 2 years out, they now are going back when they're ready to buy, and they've got their notes and it's all branded, and they've got my contact information on there. So I've had a few people that like I followed up with, never heard anything, and then all of a sudden they'll just email me out of the blue like, hey, I found your contact info, we came to your class, ready to buy. So that's been kind of the cornerstone of my business. And my like whole mission with everything I do is that I just really believe in providing value through education, and that's what we're doing.
So a couple things I heard was you're keeping it simple, and you're meeting people where they are, right? When we do this every day, sometimes we can get a little bit overhead, right? But you're bringing it down to their level and you're going deep. Let me ask you this, Kimberlee. From the time of marketing to the end, what is the average cost of one of these events, and how many buyers do you typically, what's the ROI typically?
Yeah, so I've been huge on tracking my numbers. My coach has like totally drilled that down on me. So I know exactly how many events I need to have I know how many people usually come, what my conversion rate is, and how many events I need to have to hit my goal for the year, which is pretty awesome. Because it's like when this all changed, I was really nervous. And then I realized like, no, I can keep doing these events as long as I still have the numbers. Like I'm going to be just fine for my goal for the year. So on average, I'm probably spending about like $400 to $500 on my side, and then my lender pays for the event space, which is about the same amount. I think it's like $450. So we're pretty much 50-50 on the costs. But that's my only lead gen expense. So 500 times 2 times a month, 12 months, I'm spending $12,000 a year in lead gen. That's it. And I get a huge ROI from it. So I typically have like 25 to 30 people show up. I have about a 17% conversion rate. So I'm usually getting like 3-4 buyers out of it. And then out of my buyers that become clients, I'd say about 75 to 80% of those actually end up buying. And it's not their fault. That we just have a very, very competitive market here. I've had a few buyers that they've just keep getting outbid. We're just like super deep into a seller's market, and it's very, very competitive. So it's all a numbers game. So I just know I have to get that many more clients to hit my goal for the year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So any guys, put your questions in the chat box. Does anybody have any questions for Kimberlee so far? You can unmute yourself.
Patty asked, what's the basic information included in your booklet? I think I answered that. Patty, if you have any extra questions, just let me know.
Kimberlee, do you share that booklet?
I don't. I spent a lot of time making that, and like I actually am working with a couple people to potentially turn this whole thing into a course. So I'm not really like giving that away right now because it may be available to buy eventually.
So while we're on that note, since you mentioned it, and then we'll get back into content, where can they get more information if that happens?
So I actually have a Facebook group. It's called actually gotta look it up. I think it's like FTHB Rockstar Mastermind. I'll just type it in the chat box. It's First Time Homebuyer Rockstar Mastermind. They can join that group, and we have about 300 or something people. Yeah, FTHB Rockstar Mastermind. I'll type it in the chat box for everybody. You can join that group. We have over 300 people in there, and it's cool. It's become like I shared my system in there, and other people have taken it and kind of like run with it. And it's awesome now because in the beginning, I was always answering people's questions. And now I have a few people that have like really plugged into it. And so they're like on board with this system and they're answering people's questions now. So it's fun to see it grow beyond something that's just mine.
So Manif asks, and I hope I got that right, Manif, how do you actually work with that many buyers at one time with just you and a transaction coordinator and assistant?
Yeah, so that's been a growing challenge for me. My pipeline right now, like on my opportunities, I have, I want to say like 60 something buyers that I'm working with right now that are all in different stages. So the one thing about our market here is that it's not like, I think there's other places in the country where like you get a buyer and then you just go and you show them 5 houses and they pick something. It's very different here just because we don't have that inventory. So I'm huge on getting people into agreement with me as soon as possible. Gary says that like, I think it's like 80 something percent of people will work with the first agent they meet when they're buying. So I always like to try to insert myself into that process as soon as possible. So I say anybody that's within a year of making a purchase, let's sit down, we'll talk about what you're looking for, and we'll get you set up on a search. So they may not be out shopping, but I'm still sending them properties in the MLS. And the way that I kind of spin it is like, you might not be ready to go see stuff, but you'll start seeing what's going on in the market. And by the time you are ready to buy, you're now going to be one of the most educated buyers out there. And so that's kind of a good leverage piece for me to like constantly be dripping on them without taking up too much of my time. So I've had to get very creative in just like ways that I can be touching people that's not going to take a ton of my time. Because I definitely struggle in the nurture side of things. And I just hired a new assistant. So I'm looking forward to like her helping with some of that. I'm like a lead go-getter. I'm not a lead nurturer. That's definitely a weak point of mine. So just implementing any type of like automated touch that I can, that's like reminding people that I'm still here, but it's not a lot of work for me. So I would say like at any given time, I maybe have like 10 active buyers, but it totally depends because we have like about a month and a half to 2 months supply of inventory here. So that's like not much at all. Our absorption rate is very, very tight. And so I may have some clients that like, they are just looking for the right house to pop up, and that could take a couple weeks. They might be putting an offer in like once a week on a place or getting outbid. So thankfully, just up until this point, the way that our market has flowed, it's been good enough leverage for me. We have a lot of open houses. Almost all properties are like no showings until the open house on the weekend, offers due the next like Monday or Tuesday. So that's an expectation I create with my clients at the appointment, is like, hey, when you're just getting started, like feel free to go check out as many open houses as you want, and like just sign in with my information so that they're not bugging you. And because the thing that happens a lot of times is like they might think that they like one house, and then they go and they're like, okay, well, we're just going to check out 5 open houses because we're in the area. And the house that they thought they might like, they don't. And then one they didn't think they'd like, they loved. And so I always say like, hey, I have a lot of clients. I can't go to every single open house with you. And there might be properties that you want to check out that are just, you're curious about, but you might not think you're going to love. And sometimes that ends up being the house that you love and you want to put an offer in. So if you want, I can easily go back and check out anything. If you see a property at an open house, you love it, you want to put an offer in, I can easily go back and check it out. But the reality is just like, I see so many properties, it's pretty easy for me to figure out what something is going to sell for. And most of the time they don't care so much about having me go back there. They just want to know what's a good offer.
So we had a couple questions in the chat box. Two questions that are kind of similar. How are you pivoting from in-person events at the brewery to now holding virtual events? And then someone on Facebook asked, are you still sending the booklet out on the virtual?
Yeah, so it's been pretty easy. The first week was a little messy, just trying to figure it out, but I still have the same upfront process. They're registering on Eventbrite. And then what I'm doing is I make sure, so Eventbrite in the default settings, they don't ask for phone numbers. It's just name and email. So if you're going to set up an Eventbrite, you want to make sure you add in phone numbers as well. So I have phone numbers for every single person that registers. And the cool thing about that is that I now have like a separate list of people that register, don't come to the event. They go on one drip plan. The people that come, they go on another one. So I've set up all these plans. But I am pretty much just texting everybody like the day before, hey, we have limited seats on our webinar. I want to make sure that you're going to be there. It's not recorded. Please just text yes if you'll be there. Like I make it super simple for them. And then I'm tracking who confirms, and then I'm measuring that against like who actually attends day of. And then what I do is I send an email the day before with a Zoom link. So we just have it on Zoom, and then I'm emailing a PDF of the booklet if anybody wants to print it out. And then there's a couple extra materials that we go over in the event that I don't email ahead of time. And so that's a follow-up piece for us. Afterwards, we say, oh, hey, we'll email you out the extra documents that we went over that you haven't gotten yet. And I turn that email into like here's our contact info if you want to set an appointment. And then I'm also texting everybody right after the next day after the event, just following up. Want to make sure you got the information. Did you want to get started on a preliminary search?
Awesome. I love that. I love that. Here's a couple more questions that are kind of in alignment. Somebody's asking, are your showings now still for the most part live, or are they doing virtual showings? If so, how are you doing them? And then Gail asked, are your buyers offering purchasing sight unseen right now? So how are you handling showings?
Yeah, so a couple of my buyers are offering and purchasing sight unseen. So it's been a mix. I think the biggest challenge right now for me has been other agents, because there's no one consistent way that things are being done. Some agents are still allowing showings, some are not. So it's kind of been a mixed bag. I've had some agents that are offering like really awesome Matterport tours and like video walkthroughs. And I got a couple buyers under agreement from just them seeing the walkthrough. And then what we did in our offer was it was contingent on them viewing the property in person within 24 to 48 hours, which I think that's a great option for a seller too. If you have a really well-priced property, there's a lot of interest, you can avoid as many people coming into your house as possible. And then just make sure like the listing agent is vetting the buyer really well. So that's like a really awesome opportunity for them to not having a ton of people come through the house if it's still occupied. The other thing, so personally myself, for like about 2 weeks, I couldn't show any properties because I have some clients that were purchasing a condo that was a new construction, and we had like early March, we had a builder meeting with the builder who's the seller, and then found out a couple weeks later that he was in the hospital on a ventilator with COVID. So I was like, I'm not putting any of my clients at that risk. Like, I feel fine myself, but that's just not something that I could live with. So I leveraged just those, I didn't have a choice. So I was like leveraging those virtual showings, and then relying on other listing agents. Like if they weren't going to be accommodating to a FaceTime tour, I was just saying, hey, this is my situation. Like, would you be willing to just like take my buyers through and honor our relationship? So it's been a mixed bag all over the place. But for the most part, I would say things are really happening virtually. I did do a couple in-person showings this weekend because it's been over a month since I saw that person.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So JJ asked, given the tight inventory and your volume of first-time buyers, how do you handle being in a situation where you have multiple buyers wanting to offer on the same property? Do you have a discussion, a disclosure about this possibility? How do you handle that?
I've actually never had that happen. Funny enough, I've had a few clients that were like, I've had a lot of times where someone's like, hey, I love this house. They end up going under agreement on it. And then a couple days later, someone else asks me about it. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Like, one of my other clients is already buying it, but I've never had multiple buyers offering on the same property. I think the thing is too, is like, think about it. I'm in a big city, and I'll service anywhere within 45 minutes of the city. So that also hits a ton of suburbs. So my coverage area is really huge. And I think because of that, it's just worked out well that I haven't had too much overlap in people like wanting the same properties.
Do you refer out anything outside of the 45?
Yeah, I do. I just can't drive that far and like spend that much time in traffic.
Yeah, totally get that. How are you finding so many motivated buyers ready to buy during this time? Is it solely through your workshops?
Yeah, so that's my number one lead generation source is, and it's the only thing I focus on. I do get a bunch of referrals, but I don't focus on that. So I would say about 75% of my business last year was from the workshops, and then the other 25% was from referrals. So it's just, honestly, it's having those really direct conversations. People are still like, especially in Boston where they're in small apartments, like people are still interested. And I'm just having honest conversations. Hey, do you feel like your jobs are pretty stable? Do you have any concern with that? And if they don't, like, okay, awesome. This is a good opportunity for us to potentially get a good property, because what's happened is we went from like mostly multiple offers on like almost every single property to about 50-50. So there's still multiple offers, but then some properties that I thought would get multiple offers are just sitting there. So I have buyers that I just put in an agreement last night. They got $35,000 off the list price, which is a huge discount. So there's still opportunity there. And so what I'm having for a conversation, especially with people that are just coming into my world now, when we're doing the virtual consultation, we're just talking about, hey, like, what are your fears? What are your concerns about buying right now? And here's the opportunities if it is right for you. I don't pressure anybody. It has to just be like something that they're comfortable with, but I'm very direct about this is what we're dealing with. And you may have to make a decision based on a FaceTime tour. If you're comfortable with that, there's a ton of opportunity out there for you right now.
Yeah, 100%. Does anybody else, we have about 2 minutes left. Does anybody else have questions? You can take yourself off mute. With so many people on Zoom calls, how do you allow the buyers to answer questions?
Yep. So I'm not so aggressive about making people go on video, because I'm actually not really looking at the video when we're doing it. I'm looking at the workbook. I have it screen shared on my screen and we're going through it. And so what we do is we mute everybody. And then at the very beginning, we just say, hey, this is how it's going to go today. If you have a question, unmute yourself, or type in the chat box. So people are a little bit shy in the beginning. You really have to encourage participation, but we had a ton of people typing questions in the chat box yesterday. So if for instance, if my lender is talking and he's kind of, we've done this so many times together, so I could probably like repeat his whole script for the event at this point. So I kind of know different points where like questions can get inserted, or I can just be like, hey, Lucas, like so-and-so had a question about this. Can you talk about that? So I'll just like, when he's talking, I'll manage the chat box. If people have questions come up, I'll be like, hey, that's a great question. We'll talk about that in a second. And vice versa. Like when I'm talking, if someone has a question, he'll manage that chat box too. And I think the really important thing about having like a successful event is just having that really good lender relationship. It took me a while to find a lender that was awesome, but I would never work with anybody else. And it's just been a really great, mutually beneficial relationship. I'm his top agent. So it definitely comes back to me too sometimes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So a couple things. How many attended your workshop yesterday? And then we'll wrap it up.
We had, I think, 28 or 30. I would have to go back and look at my numbers. So, and that's individuals. So the cool thing with the workshops is like in person, I only have so many seats, but online, like I can have 30 people, and that it might be like 75% of those are couples. So there could have been like 50, 60 people on the call.
It's amazing. That's amazing. So a couple things. Kimberlee, how do they get in touch with you?
Yep, I will type my info into the chat box. Best way to get in touch with me probably is to text me. My phone number is 978-587-6489. You can also Facebook message me. I'm not as quick to respond to those just because I get so many Facebook messages, or email me at Kimberlee, KIMBERLEE @streetpropertyteam.com.
And then I do want to mention, so Kimberlee and I think a lot of you are in there. We both moderate a group called Command Your Conversion, all around KW Command for our KW agents. Kimberlee's doing everything through Command. And I know we didn't touch on that today, but if you go into that group, she's got a ton of stuff around how she's doing this through Command. And then our calls this week, we have switched our calls. They're going to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8:30 Eastern. We'll replay them for our Pacific folks. And this week is all on Command. So I've got someone actually from labs coming Wednesday, and then I have a really high level admin from a big team that is doing everything through Command. So, or not everything, but a lot of stuff through Command. So Kimberlee, thank you so much. You're amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you guys just like, if you have any other questions, join that group. Feel free to ask me. Like, I like to just share to everybody as much as possible. So if you have a question about how I'm doing something in Command, post it in the group and I can record a video and post it in there for everybody to see.
100%. And if you're not a part of the group, it's Remote Revolution. It's kind of just a condensed version of everything that's out there. We kind of pick the best and we put it in the group. So thank you so much, Kimberlee. Guys, have a great week, and we'll see you Wednesday. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.